Bien. So I'm going to do the presentation in English, right? Because obviously the contents that I will be presenting are of course in English as it is our matter of concern, right? Because, well, all of us being here this afternoon are those who are teachers. Well, we're teachers and we've been dealing with this for at least for the past 20 years of our lives. And for you, our beloved students, probably you will be doing this for the remaining 20 or 25 years of your lives. So we might as well stick to our business, right? Which is English, of course. So, well, the title of my presentation today is, do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate in asking me. You can always interrupt me and say, teacher, can you please clarify more on this? And I will be delighted to expand on any query you might come up with, okay? So, well, the title of my presentation today is Language Teachers' Cognition, okay? And it has to do with all of what is in our brains as teachers, okay? If we do something else besides teaching, say, for example, some of you might be musicians or a chef or a nurse or a salesperson or any other professional or technical field you might be working as well or parallel to your studies or your profession as an English language teacher, well, then that might require some other sort of skills or some other type of cognition, right? So for now, this afternoon, we will focus just on language teachers' cognition and what is it that we have there and why is it that we should keep this in mind? Well, of course that language teachers' knowledge and cognition is something that, yes, it has been studied, but it seems to be that there's a lot of focus, a lot of attention on learners' knowledge, right? How learners learn better, why learners learn this or that in one way or another. And what about sometimes we leave on the side the teachers' part of knowledge, okay? We use knowledge or cognition. If you remember the title of my presentation, it says cognition, right? So does anyone remember, can anyone tell me or rephrase, what does cognition mean? What does cognition allude to? Anyone? I would like to hear someone saying something about it. Because let's start by being clear about this concept here. Anyone? Please, please, please. I will give an extra point to whomever says something.
Hello, can I?
Yes.
Can I? Okay. Well understood with this, cognition refers to what can we recognize the context of the language used, perhaps, or how it is used.
Anything else?
Also, it may refer to, well, in which context are it's used, or how it's used, or who is using it.
Okay. I'm not going to say if it's right or wrong. I just want to hear what you know on or what you think it is. Anybody else? I would like to hear someone else.
Well, I think it's the way that we process the information that we receive from the context that we were in.
Okay, I'm listening. As I said, I'm not saying if it's right. There's no wrong answers. I just, perhaps some answers might be too broadened. Some others might be more direct, right? More specific. So I'm just fishing here, and I want to know if you've heard about this concept of language teachers' cognition previously. Anybody else? I would like to hear someone else.
it is the process in which we acquire knowledge, the different mental processes in which knowledge is um, um, how do you say, well, acquired.
Uh-huh.
Language teachers' cognition will be, well, of course, that same processes, but focused in our area, which is being language teachers.
Okay, okay, good. Anybody else? Anybody else? I want to hear someone else. Come on, let me hear you. Don't be shy. I'm not grading you on the basis of the answer you might provide me. So just go ahead. Say what you think.
Me, teacher?
Yes, 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 please go ahead.
Well, I think that language cognition is the knowledge that a teacher has acquired. In this case, the ability to teach others, the style, the way you teach.
Okay, good, very good. Thank you. I see that all of you who gave me an answer are pretty close. Some of you are very accurate on your idea of what is teachers' knowledge and cognition. Yes, cognition is no other than what we know in Spanish, la cognición, right? Which comes from the word conocimiento, right? Or the other way around. Conocimiento comes from cognition and cognition. Conocimiento viene de cognición y cognición viene de conocimiento. Las dos son prácticamente lo mismo, ¿sí? Es nada más la derivación de la palabra. Now, when it comes to language teachers, right, there are certain aspects of our knowledge that have been lined up very, very specifically, very clear. As Professor Floricely mentioned while she presented me earlier this afternoon, she said, she talked a bit about what I do, and as most of you know, I'm a professor in the department, and I've taught different courses, and many of you have been my students in previous semesters, which is wonderful because we've had the opportunity to meet each other, and most of you at this point already know my work and how I conduct my classes and so on and so forth, and vice versa. At this point, I know many of you, probably most of you, I sort of know how your personality is and how you behave in the classroom and so on and so forth. But let me tell you that when I started my career 20 so years ago, you become a teacher because for many reasons, right? And then you start teaching, and then you can have a manual and you follow the manual, and there you go, walk in the classroom, standing in front of the board, and then you start delivering your class and so on and so forth. But you don't think of these things like, oh, teacher knowledge, teacher cognition. Oh, I should know this because I'm going to be a teacher, and this is what I should know. I only came up to realize about the importance of this tag and all what it implies through the years as I've been working, and of course as I've been conducting research. And as I said, in the previous years, I've conducted some research that has to do directly, that is directly related to what teachers know, what amount of knowledge, what types of knowledge teachers know, right? And obviously, I've been soaked within the literature, trying to see what are the trends, what is important teachers to know, why they should know this or that, or why they should be aware of what they know, right? Why? Because you will see, and you are soon to notice this, because most of you are taking Práctica Docente, right? And because you will be doing your class observations, you will bump into situations, real teaching learning situations in a language classroom, and you will notice that some teachers out there teaching, and I'm not diminishing the word of anyone whatsoever or saying that someone is not good enough or whatsoever. It's just that what I'm saying is that you soon will be, well, actually all of you are already observing, and I'm sure you've started noticing things and you've started seeing things, right? And sometimes as teachers, we are not aware of what we know. We are not aware of what we should know. And we sometimes are not even aware on how to learn something, right? It's like, I'm going to switch into Spanish and say, si nos exigen como maestros y nos dicen, tenemos que enseñar esto y tenemos que enseñar esto, pero ¿cómo lo aprendo? ¿Quién me enseña? Bueno, ahorita ustedes están estudiando, pero los maestros que ya están allá afuera, que están en servicio y que a lo mejor no aprendieron algo o se les olvidó o se fosilizaron en alguna situación, well, that is why it is important to be aware of this idea, of this concept of teachers' knowledge and cognition, right? So teachers' cognition is the milieu of thoughts, internal. Thoughts has to do with what is inside of our heads that guide the language teacher, as opposed to behavior, which alludes to what the teacher does in practice, that is external and that is visible to everyone, okay? So what does that mean? There are basically two things among teachers. And one is cognition, which is all of what we know, all of what is in our thoughts, right? And it's inside, and all of what is outside, and that is known as behavior, right? And that is the real practice. What we do on the external is what we show in our practice, is what people perceive from us, what people believe we are, which of course it's created internally in the mind, right? So it's very important to have these two concepts separated, right? Well, not necessarily separated. One is strongly linked to the other, but I mean identified, I would say, right? So it's like when they say que lo que pienses sea lo que hagas. You see, there must be a sort of congruence between what we think and what we do. We cannot think one thing and do another thing, right? So the ideal is to think in one way and line up or practice or acts into that line of thought. Okay, so just like this, keep this in mind. You see, it's the image, right, of the internal thoughts. It's what we think, right? Exactly, just exactly as in the pictures, right? Teacher's cognition is the thoughts. It's the internal, whereas the behavior, what the teacher does in practice, right, that is external, okay? And that depends on what we do in the practice, what we do externally, of course, depends on the cognition, on what we know and on what we're thinking. So that's why these two things, which I say must be clearly identified, at the same time are strongly linked. It's like saying two sides of the same coin, pretty much. Okay? Are you following me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Next.
Yes.
So cognition relates to knowledge, and it involves, what does it involve? Any guessing? Some people mentioned something earlier. Could you repeat something else about that? About what you mentioned about cognition? Anyone? Conocimiento. ¿Qué es el conocimiento? Y no solo del maestro de lenguas, no solo del maestro de inglés, en general, ¿qué es el conocimiento? ¿Alguien me puede decir? Yo no sabía esto hasta que empecé a hacer investigación acerca del conocimiento de los maestros. Pero antes yo andaba por la vida. Yo incluso empecé a dar clases hace 23 años. Sí, 20, no, 20, 24 años en el 96, antes de terminar mi carrera. Y ¿qué iba yo a pensar en esa época de la cognición y del pensamiento? No, hombre, yo con mi manual, llegaba y estas son las reglas y lo vamos a hacer. Ya conforme me fui involucrando, me fui preparando un poco más, luego hice mi maestría, tomé cursos aquí, cursos allá, diplomado aquí, diplomado allá, empecé a hacer investigación, entonces ya me fui empapando y fui entendiendo más cómo funcionan todos estos conceptos. Anyone? What does cognition relate to knowledge? Anyone? ¿Qué es la cognición? Alguien díganme, en español, no tiene que ser en inglés. ¿Qué es la cognición en general?
Yo.
Yeah, please.
Yo. Se relaciona porque es casi lo mismo. El conocimiento es todo lo que vamos adquiriendo día con día desde que vamos creciendo. Como que es algo que activamos nosotros en nuestro cerebro y vamos absorbiendo información poco a poco de cómo lo vamos viviendo. Así como usted dice que por medio de que fue usted investigando, fue adquiriendo esa información, eso es la cognición y el conocimiento, porque lo vamos guardando en nuestro cerebro para poder usarlo en un futuro. Y si sabemos que es algo malo, pues como que ya tenemos esa percepción igual. Y sería todo.
Okay. Dorian, eres tú, ¿verdad? ¿Quién
Sí.
habló? Ajá, sí, I recognize your voice. Muy bien, very good, thank you. Anybody else? ¿Alguien más? ¿Me puedes decir qué es la cognición? ¿Alguien más?
Para mí la cognición es toda esa habilidad que tenemos para procesar información, para adquirirla, cómo analizamos todo lo que entra por medio de nuestros sentidos, por así decirlo, por la vista, por los oídos, por el oído.
Very good, very good. Cognition is processed, stored, and takes place in a brain, and it involves the memory, the thinking, reasoning, understanding, judgment, and behavior. Okay, these are the characteristics of, or I better say, all these different activities that happen in our brain build cognition. All of them represent cognition. When we are thinking, right? When we are reasoning, when we take a book and we open it and we start looking at the words, at the sentences, we start looking at letters, and then from the letter we identify a word, and then with different words all together we identify strings of words which become into sentences, and then from a sentence we can build a paragraph, and then from a paragraph we can read a whole text. The moment our brain is doing that super speedy, super fast action of reasoning, of thinking, imagine all of these happen together, right? We are activating our thinking, our reasoning, our understanding, our judgment, and our behavior, right? Por eso dicen cuando una persona le cuesta trabajo aprender, ¿sí? Cuando una persona a lo mejor no entiende algo, cuando una persona a lo mejor está afectada por algún accidente y se golpea la cabeza, ¿sí? Esa persona tiene trabajo, le cuesta trabajo memorizar, pensar, razonar, entender, hacer juicios, controlar su conducta, ¿sí? So, todas estas, all these different actions that we see here, all of them are the ones that allow us to develop our cognition, okay? This is a picture of the brain, and it's showing us where intelligence, judgment, and behavior are stored, right? Where memory is stored. The brain, this would be the front of the brain, and this would be the back of the brain. Si alguien de ustedes tomó psicolingüística conmigo, no sé si recuerden que de las primeras lecciones que vimos era dónde se producía el lenguaje. Y el lenguaje se produce aquí, esta es la broca y el Wernicke. Broca's and Wernicke's area and the arcuate fasciculus. Y esta es la zona del cerebro en donde se produce el lenguaje. Si por alguna razón, luego sucedía en las telenovelas hace 30 años, yo me acuerdo, que así típico que alguien, en un accidente chocaba y se golpeaba la cabeza y perdía la memoria, ¿no? Ese era el típico, ¿cómo se dice? La narrativa, ¿no? Típica de una telenovela, cheesy soap opera. And it was memory, it was about losing memory, right? So, luego, ¿por qué decimos que los adolescentes, why do we say teenagers are so dumb and so silly and so stupid? ¿Por qué decimos que no, I'm not saying this like deliberately, it's just that people, right? Sometimes we say, teenagers, they're so dumb. Los adolescentes son unos tontos. Es que no piensan, no razonan. Well, of course, because they're still growing up. Their brains are still in the process of maturation. Their brains will only stop maturating around the age of 20, 21. The earliest would be 18. So you cannot expect a 15-year-old to have a wise judgment or to behave properly or to develop or to focus on their intelligence because their brains are still developing, right? Are we clear? Are you following me? ¿Sí me siguen?
Yes.
So far, yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, ¿cuántos años tienen ustedes? How old are you? 22, 23, 24, more or less. Am I right?
20.
22.
Okay. Is anyone 20?
Yes, 20.
Wow, that's young.
20.
Wow. Okay, well, but most of you should be in your 22, 23, more or less. 24 maybe, and a bit more. Why? Because you start university at 18, more or less. And our program is 5 years, so by the time you are in 9th semester, you should be at least 22, 23, more or less. Okay, so I'm showing you this, right? Because we teachers, right? You see, by the time we become professionals, by the time we join our careers, right, on teaching, most of us are already adults, right? Most of us have already developed our brains more or less to the average. And that means that cognitively, right, that means that cognitively we have intelligence enough, we have developed our sense of judgment, right? We know how to behave properly, more or less, right? How to behave. It's like, for example, I know that I'm not going to come to class all drunk, right? For example. Or that I know that if tomorrow I have class early, then I should go to bed early because I want to have a nice rest, right, at night, so I'm fresh and all clear the next morning. I know that there are certain behavioral codes that I should follow within the classroom, especially if I have younger learners, right? I know that if I'm teaching, say, kindergarten or elementary school, I'm not going to talk about adult matters because that level of students might not be ready yet with the maturity enough to understand certain topics. Now, the reason why I'm saying all this is because I want you to place, right, where cognition is, how it happens, and what does it imply. Now, when I talk about language teachers' cognition, then we're talking business. Then we're going to the target. And what is it that we are referring to? Well, Ah, my slides don't want to change. Come on, come on, come on, come on. So why is teachers' knowledge important then? Anyone? Any question? Any thought about this? ¿Alguien me puede decir? Entonces, si ya les hablé de qué es la cognición y todas estas partes del cerebro que, que intervienen en el proceso cognitivo de los maestros, ¿alguien me puede decir por qué es importante eso? ¿Alguna idea? Anyone? Why?
Can I say something?
Yes, 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 please, go.
I think it's important that the teachers be knowledgeable so we know something and we know what to teach to our students. We can share value. We can share something important for their life. In this case, we can build language to the students. That's why we need to know something. That's why it's important that teachers possess knowledge about what they're going to teach.
Uh-huh, good, very good. Anybody else? Any other feeling about this thought?
Kind of the same. I mean, teachers need to have a wild knowledge because they're going to explain it, and not only for once, but for a whole class with different kind of students. So he needs to find uh, the way to teach.
Mm-hmm, very good, very good. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Because we cannot teach just because we need to um, learn the different options that we can use, like strategies, techniques, approaches, which are supported by different authors.
Exactly, exactly. All of you, all of what you say is correct. We need to know what is better for our teaching context. And when I say the teaching context, I have to think on all of what is around me, on all of what it, on all of what my teaching will imply. And that goes from the macro level to the micro level. What would be the macro level? Well, the macro level will be which institution? Where am I teaching? Am I teaching abroad? Am I teaching in another country? Am I teaching in Mexico? Am I teaching in Canada? Am I teaching in Brazil? Where am I teaching? Right? Because believe it or not, some of you, God knows, might end up teaching abroad, somewhere else in another country. I could give you examples of students like you from Lengua Inglesa that they've been teaching in France, and they've been teaching in Croatia, and they've been teaching in Canada and in different places because they've joined these exchange programs like teacher assistants and things like that. So we start from where are we teaching? Who are we teaching? What are the needs of my learners? Therefore, I need to prepare. It's not the same. We've said this before. It's not the same to teach ESP, English for Specific Purposes, to a group of lawyers and say teach English, law English, for example, than teaching English to kindergartners. You see the difference? It's not the same to teach English at, say, pre-university level, right, as to teach English to students in a bachelor's program on English language teaching, okay? So we need to be aware of what is the type and the amount and the source of knowledge we need to bring in, and we need to be ready, loaded with for our teaching, okay? Are you following me?
Yes, totally.
Yes.
Okay,
Kind of.
good. Good, good. So here we go. What are the types then? Teacher is saying, teacher's knowledge, teacher's knowledge. What is it? Well, what are the types of teacher's knowledge then? Well, there are different types of teacher's knowledge. Teacher's knowledge is divided in, it's like we say in Spanish, you know, that hand fan, como un abanico. Yeah, in English you say hand fan, ventilador de mano. Yeah, right. What creative? Well, I don't know another word for that. I've just heard it as hand fan. So types of teachers' knowledge can vary, and they go in a different array. Well, they have the word array, in a different array of types, right? They are classified according to their nature. And that's our focus today, right? We have first, in the first place, Bliss. He came up with the idea of, he was one of the first leading scholars who brought up the idea of classifying the different types of knowledge teachers possess, right? He talked about the technical knowledge or subject matter content knowledge, right? What is it? Well, technical knowledge or subject matter content knowledge is, for example, metalinguistic knowledge. What is metalinguistic knowledge? Well, examples of metalinguistic knowledge are, for instance, all these grammatical rules, right? It's also language proficiency. It's like knowing how the language, in this case, the target language, because we're talking about language teachers, it's knowing what are the rules that govern the system, right? So it's like the question comes up, do we know the rules and system that governs that language well enough, right? Or am I just trying to come and teach English without knowing how it works? Because one thing is being able to speak the language, and another thing is knowing how to write it properly, right? Knowing why there's, for example, knowing why, I'm going to ask you one very easy one, which I think you should know. Why do we say for child, why don't we say child and instead we say children? Anyone? Why? Anyone?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Why do we say in singular, why do we say child, and in plural we change it to children? Anyone?
Like perhaps due to a grammatical rule. I don't know exactly which rule, but that's what I know. Is due to a grammatical rule. It's changed from child to children.
Yes, it's because the rule, that's it. It's because child, it's an irregular noun, right? Or why, for example, in some words that end in Y, when we pluralize them, or also some verbs, when we change them, why do we change the Y by IES or IE? Like study, he studies. Why do we do that? Anyone? ¿Por qué cambiamos la E, la Y por E?
It's a grammar rule. I mean, we change it when it refers to the third person singular. That's how we conjugate this verb. In this case, study.
Exactly. Is that you, Santiago?
Yeah, I'm Santiago.
Okay, good. I recognize your voice as well. Yes, exactly. That is precisely because of the grammatical rules. So that means that you are aware of these grammatical rules, right? Good, 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 good. Now, if I ask you, what is tense? What is tense? Anyone? What
Hola,
is
¿me
tense?
escuchan?
Yes.
Es el tiempo verbal en el que está conjugado el verbo principal en cualquiera de sus pronombres elegidos.
That is correct. Exactly. Tense alludes to the chronological time of an action, right? If I have a given verb, whatever it is, right, the tense will say if when was this action conducted in chronological terms. And that means if it was conducted in the past, right, or if it's been conducted in the present, or if it might be conducted some point ahead in the future, right? Now, that's good. You know, you are aware of tense. And then if I ask, what is aspect? Can anyone tell me that? Anyone? Anyone? Aspect. Anyone?
Recuerdo haberlo visto en gramática, que son los verbos, por ejemplo, hay verbos que terminan pueden parecer verbos que terminan en ing, pero a veces no funcionan como verbos, sino como adjetivos. Entonces a eso se le da bueno, es un aspecto, su aspecto es quizás participle, por ejemplo, o part of the best phrase, o part of the algo, preposition of phrase, etc. Si no me equivoco.
Yes, it's more or less something like that. It has to do with, the aspect has to do with the nature of the verb, right? In terms of perception, in terms of perspective from what the speaker is saying. Yes, I know the action happened in the past. Yes, but in the past, was it a bounded past or was it unbounded? It's like if I say the phone was ringing when someone was knocking at my door. Okay, so these two things occur in the past tense, but within the past tense, both activities were happening, right? Were taking place. Therefore, they carry the ing or the gerund, right? Which indicates that the actions were unbounded or open. They were transferring like with non-stop. They were happening. Na, 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 permanently. Phone ringing, ding, 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 ding. It doesn't say the phone rang. It says the phone was ringing. It doesn't say when it started ringing and when did it stop ringing. We know that it was in the past, but within the past, right, it was an unbounded, una acción sin bordes o sin límites, una acción que estaba transcurriendo. Bueno, eso es lo que indica el aspecto. Now, that's the difference between aspect and tense, and they go together. Now, a language teacher, right, must have a solid and sound grammatical knowledge about what or he is teaching, right? We cannot, well, it's not that we cannot, but we should not, I better say, we should not, if there is something that we don't know, that we are not sure, then what we do, well, then let's go to the manual, let's go to the grammar books, let's see what it is about, and let's inform ourselves and study a bit about that in order to have a solid knowledge. in order to build our technical knowledge, our subject matter content knowledge. Believe it or not, in my experience, in my 20-something years of experience teaching and working at different levels of language teaching, I have, and of course, because I conducted some research on this matter, I have bumped into teachers. Remember that we have pre-service teachers, which is you. Ustedes son maestros de pre-servicio. That means that you haven't gone out there to the world to work. Well, just a few of you, I think, have already started teaching. Once you graduate, once you finish and you start like working like full-time, then you will become in-service teachers, okay? So believe it or not, out there are in-service teachers who might not have a strong and sound linguistic and metalinguistic knowledge. And grammars is the core of the language. Grammars is like the backbone of the language, right? It's like we say in Spanish, la gramática en el inglés es la columna vertebral, ¿sí? Yo no puedo, o no, mejor dicho, de que pueda, porque pues si no hay quien dé la clase, pues bueno, aunque yo tenga debilidades lingüísticas, metalingüísticas, pero pues hace urge el maestro, pues voy a tratar de darlo como yo pueda. Y sí, así es. Desafortunadamente, tenemos todavía ese problema, ¿sí? De que ante la falta de insuficientes maestros, pues hay, ahora sí, como dicen en el béisbol, hay bateadores emergentes y hay maestros que hacen un gran sacrificio y que hacen un gran esfuerzo, lo cual también es digno de admirarse y de reconocer. Y tienen que salir a dar clases y a veces no tienen esa gramática tan sólida, ¿sí? Que es fundamental para poder, o mejor dicho, para dar una mejor clase, ¿sí? So that is, ¿por qué metalinguistic knowledge? Why metalinguistic knowledge? Porque es el conocimiento meta, superior, arriba de. Una cosa es el lenguaje que hablamos, pero ver el lenguaje desde arriba, imagínense como los títeres que los agarran así como con sus hilitos y los mueven desde arriba y los muñequitos son los que están bailando. Imagínense que el lenguaje que se hable son los muñequitos y los títeres que están bailando allá abajo. Y el metalenguaje serían las maderitas y los hilitos de los que se cuelgan los títeres, ¿sí? En otras palabras, en el lenguaje, ¿sí? Los hilos que jalan el lenguaje, que lo gobiernan y que dicen cuáles son esas reglas gramaticales, que para los plurales irregulares cambia la forma de la palabra a veces no. Fish is fish y ship is ship, pero child is children, and so many like that. O que cuando un verbo termina en Y y se conjuga en presente simple con primera persona de singular, cambia la Y por I latina, por E y S, ¿ok? ¿Sabe? Esos serían los hilitos, esos serían los palitos que mueven a los títeres, en este caso, el conocimiento metalingüístico. Are we clear so far? People?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Next. Linguistic knowledge. Or in other words, ¿alguien de ustedes ha presentado el CADEI o el TOEFL o alguno de los exámenes de, ¿cómo se llaman? Acá están CADEI, TOEFL, IELTS, Trinity College, todos estos. ¿Alguien los ha presentado?
We haven't, but in some activities, the teachers uses some of the exercises, and we kind of.
Yes. También hay versiones caseras. Por ejemplo, en la universidad tenemos el CADEI, ¿no? La versión local, la casera que le llaman, que se presenta creo cada semestre. Y recuerden que siempre, o cuando llevaron sus clases de inglés, siempre tenían la parte de language in use. right? You are evaluated on the basis of the 4 skills, but then you're also evaluated on terms of language in use. So one thing is knowing, right? One thing is knowing the metalinguistic knowledge, which is basically the grammatical rules, right? The rules and system that govern the language. And another is the linguistic use. And the linguistic use has to do with how do we produce, right? How do we use the language? How we communicate? How proficient we are, right? And this is based on our knowledge, on a balance. And the question is our knowledge balanced enough amongst the 4 basic skills? Do I know how to write properly as opposed as just speaking, right? Have you bumped into, sometimes it's interesting because there have been cases of native speakers that obviously it's their native language, so therefore they speak naturally and normally and it's their language. But they don't know all these rules about grammar. It's the same as in Spanish. Es cuando vemos a la gente que escribe con faltas de ortografía, por ejemplo, ¿no? O que si les preguntas mismo en español, oye, ¿tú sabes cuál es el pretérito, no? Cuando conjugas los verbos. And they don't know, obviously, because they are not in the field of language teaching, for example, right? We know these in the tip of a tongue, at the twist of your fingers, because we work with this, right? Because this is what we deal with, because this is what we teach, and this is what we keep learning every day. So that is why it's fresh. But also it's important to keep in mind that this linguistic knowledge is also basic to have sound and strong, okay? And this is technical knowledge or subject matter content knowledge. Are we clear up to here? Anyone?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So that is for technical knowledge or subject matter content knowledge. Then we go to pedagogical knowledge. See, you notice the difference. Ya empezamos a ver la diferencia, ¿eh? Vimos primero lo que era conocimiento técnico o de la materia. Ahora vamos a ver pedagogical knowledge. What is pedagogical knowledge? Pedagogical knowledge is knowing how to transmit knowledge to the learner, right? Pedagogical knowledge, it's basically the underarching theory supporting our teaching, right? It's like it goes from the big umbrella, and under the big umbrella we start with an approach, then comes the method, and then comes the techniques, okay? No sé si han oído hablar que luego hay escuelas, por ejemplo, que dicen, no, es que nosotros tenemos el enfoque constructivista o trabajamos bajo un enfoque de competencias o bajo un enfoque cognitivo. It depends on the school, on the institution, on the philosophy for which you might be working, you might be teaching, right? These are just, I have listed just a few of them. I'm just presenting a few of them. Structural, cognitive, psychological, functional, constructivist, etc. There are many approaches, and approaches never stop coming up. I better say new approach. There are always new approaches coming up. Some become more famous, more popular, more useful, more effective than others. It all depends on what are the purposes of the teaching. As I said in the beginning, much of our teachers' knowledge, much of teachers' cognition depends on the context of teaching. Most of teachers' knowledge, right, will be not determined, but will be linked, will be connected directly to the context of teaching, right? So teaching approaches, right, are basically all these pedagogical knowledge basically has to do involves the specific ways on how to teach any of the 4 basic skills like speaking, listening, writing, reading, and its sub-skills like vocabulary, for example, right? Or ESP, English for specific purposes. For example, think of, por ejemplo, los estudiantes de medicina, right? Students in the medicine school. Muy bien, muy bien, muy bien. Sorry. Someone came to tell me that she finished all her lunch. Tierra, hija, tierra. Sorry about that. Okay. So these different approaches are like the, how would I say, like the above rules or principles that will dictate our philosophy and our way of teaching, basically, right? For example, the structural approach will say that language can be reduced to a learnable set of building blocks, right? Or the constructivist approach will say that learners co-construct their own knowledge, right? O han oído hablar, por ejemplo, que dicen del sistema, well, that's a method, right? From this, we'll go there in a second. Now, are we clear with these approaches? Los approaches son los enfoques, ¿sí? Entonces, dependiendo de la escuela, ¿sí? Por ejemplo, el Instituto Cumbres, ¿no? El Instituto Cumbres tiene un approach, tiene un enfoque. Y ellos trabajan con un enfoque inmersivo. ¿Y qué significa un enfoque inmersivo? Bueno, un enfoque inmersivo it has to do with immersion. Y significa que los niños van a estudiar todo en la lengua meta, ¿no? In the target language. Children will be taking mathematics, biology, history, all content subject will be conducted in English, in the target language, right? Why? Because their approach is immersion. Independientemente de que sea un enfoque inmersivo, right? Van a tener algunos métodos, ¿sí? Y los métodos van a ir igual en función de in relation to very specific teaching needs, right? Históricamente han existido muchos métodos y eso creo que lo habrán visto en su clase de métodos hace 2 o 3 semestres. Like the grammar translation method, the audiolingual method, the communicative method, and so on. Hay uno, el famoso, que les iba a decir, el método Montessori, creo que se llama, ¿no? Montessori, el método Montessori, que es un poco los niños aprenden a través de probar y de hacer, experimentar cosas, ¿no? Físicamente. Porque Montessori fue una psicóloga que existió hace muchos años y bueno, ella decía que los niños debían aprender a través de estar expuestos al medio ambiente, a las cosas que lo conforman, etc. Pero en el caso de lenguajes, in the case of languages, right, the different methods, for example, are the grammar translation, or the audiolingual, when people were taught in the past, they would, ¿qué pasó? In the past, the grammar translation method, for example, was used during Second World War, right? And basically the American soldiers, right, the army from the United States, they would go, say, to Europe when they were rebuilding Europe after the Second World War, and the soldiers and all the military men started teaching English to people in Europe because they needed to communicate, to survive, to help, to develop, to help to rebuild, right, to build up and to develop the European economies after the war. And then the grammar translation method was very efficient and very popular because people just wanted to learn how to translate manuals, how things will work, right, and how to just follow the rules and the guides they were given. And it was a very famous method back then. This is 70 years ago. And then there's also the audiolingual method, where people would be learning through drills and repetition. They would be listening and listening with these headphones like for hours, and then they would repeat, listen and repeat, listen and repeat. And then communicative, that's pretty much what we are more familiar. This came up in the 1980s, and the communicative method has to do more with communicating for a purpose, right? When there is a task, there's they call it communicated task-based approach or method. And basically you need to communicate to get the message across for pretty much basically surviving skills, right? To get to one point to another. And then from there we have also the techniques, like for example the TPR, total physical response, which has to do with conducting like physical activities within the classroom. Like this is very popular among children. It's like, for example, when you are teaching children certain verbs and you put them to jump in the classroom, to run in the classroom, to walk in the classroom, to sing in the classroom, to clap in the classroom, and then you give them all these sort of activities that are related to the nature of the verse, for example. PPP, that's another technique, is the present, practice, and produce, and so on and so forth. So all these, either approach, method, and technique, all of these things together, combined together, are the pedagogical knowledge, right, that we language teachers possess, and that basically conduct our teaching, right? The subject matter or technical knowledge, which is the previous one we saw, right? This technical knowledge, right, basically is what we need. This is the what, right? This is the what we need. What is important to get a good metalinguistic knowledge, to get good linguistic knowledge, okay? And then the pedagogical knowledge, right? This one is the how, right? Okay, well, I know English well, but now how do I do it? Okay, well, this is how I do it. I stick to an approach, I follow a method, and then I implement the different techniques out there. Okay, are we clear? So far, people, I don't hear you.
Yes.
Yes, clear. Thank you.
Okay, good. Good. Next. Then we have the practical knowledge. What is the practical knowledge? What is that? Well, as its name says, the practical knowledge is basically the procedural knowledge in the classroom. We we studied that. You remember you presented that 2 weeks ago? It's how do we talk to our students? How do we distribute our class? How do we arrange the classroom layout, right? It's the practical things in the classroom, right? It's like, for example, classroom management. It's like, okay, guys, please listen carefully. I'm going to tell you what you're going to do today. You're going to split into teams. You're going to make teams of 3-4 people maximum, and you're going to work together. I'm going to give you a piece of text which you will have to read and then summarize. And at the end of the class, you will have 3 minutes to talk about, right? Or when I give you the signal, you will answer, okay? So now clap with me. When I say up, you stand up, okay? Up, up, and then children stand up and start jumping. When I say down, then you go on your knees down, 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 and like that, right? Or when you say, okay, now aces will be with aces, hearts with hearts, clovers with clovers, and so on and so forth. It's like the practical knowledge. And believe it or not, all of this knowledge, it's very handy, it's very important, and we must have it in the tip of our tongues as well, right? Because sometimes you don't know what to do. First day you step in the classroom and say, gee, now what am I gonna do? Well, always think of this. Make your scratch notes on what you're gonna do. That's why it is important to have and to do your lesson plans. Because within your lesson plans, you're gonna make little notes like post-its on the side of your lesson plan and say, okay, when I do this, I'm gonna give these instructions and I'm gonna pair that up with this type of activity. You see what I mean? Are you following me?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Good. Good. Next, we have teachers' personal practical knowledge. Okay? What is that? Teachers' personal. Teachers' personal practical knowledge. It's teachers' personal philosophies, metaphors, and narrative. Pretty much when teacher Magnolia starts telling you all her stories about her life, blah, 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 what happened to me here and then, and one day, and it happened, it turned out that I was that is, it's the teacher's own personal way of teaching. Jokes, games, songs, your narrative, your personal stories you share with your audience. We teachers, we have the floor. They are looking at us. Now I have what, 40 people listening to me, 50, I don't know, I'm out of the Zoom screen. I can only see my presentation as well. But your learners will be your audience. They will judge on what you say. It'll depend on you on how you get them engaged with what you want them to be engaged. I don't know if I told you this. I think I did. I still remember, siempre, siempre, siempre. If I tell you, ¿de qué maestros se acuerdan? Acuérdense de un maestro en la primaria y de uno en la secundaria y de uno en la prepa. I'm not going to ask you for university. You know why? Because it's very fresh and you have all of them in mind now. I would like to ask you in 10 years from now, if I see you, and if we're alive, God willing, which teachers you will remember? Not now. Now it's not the moment because you're still here. This is now. This is present. It is here, right? All of us are fresh in your minds. But think of one teacher from elementary school, one from secondary school, and one from bachillerato. Can you think of them? Can you recall them in your minds?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, teacher.
Yes. Okay. Some might have very nice memories. Some might not have too nice memories, right? And some might not even remember one, okay? Now, these teachers' personal philosophies, metaphors, and narrative basically is what makes ourselves stay in your learner's mind forever. Yo todavía recuerdo a mi maestra de primer año de primaria. ¿Ah? Y a mi maestra de tercer año. O sea, en la primaria solo me dieron clase 3 maestros porque se repetían, pero las recuerdo a las 3 perfectamente. La que me dio clase en primer año de primaria, bendito Dios, todavía vive. Y me la he topado en el súper o en la plaza, y la he saludado con tanto gusto. De verdad que la he abrazado, le he dado un beso porque, Dios mío, digo, esta mujer me enseñó a agarrar el lápiz y a escribir, que fue el inicio de lo que sé hasta el día de hoy. Y las que me dieron el resto de la primaria, porque una maestra me dio, la que me dio primero me dio otra vez creo en segundo o en tercer año. Y la que me dio segundo me dio cuarto y creo que quinto año. Y ya sexto año me dio otra. Pero me acuerdo tanto la maestra que me dio tercer y cuarto año, la maestra Gloria. Creo que les platiqué de ella hace unos días, que soñé con ella y luego busqué en internet y se murió el año pasado. Pero esa maestra nos hablaba y nos platicaba de ella, de sus viajes, estoy hablando de los 80, cuando no había internet, cuando no había celulares, cuando viajar al extranjero era algo realmente no muy fácil. Y pues esa maestra y su hermana, que era otra maestra, la que me dio sexto año, ellas viajaban y nos contaban que cuando iban a Estados Unidos no podían pisar el césped de los parques porque estaba prohibido. Y ellas nos contaban que los perros que los perros salían a la calle no podían hacer popó en el parque, por ejemplo, o de cuando iban a Hawái, o de cuando fueron a Suiza, y todo eso se nos queda grabado, ¿sí? Y sirve, y fue fueron todas esas historias que nos contaban eran tan motivantes, a mí me motivaron mucho. Y tuve un maestro en la secundaria, a mí, y también me acuerdo de él, no me acuerdo de todos, pero de ese sí me acuerdo, ¿no? Y había otro que también se burlaba de los chamacos, ¿no? Y les decía, a ver, tu tarea, tráela. Oye, tú no estudiaste, mira, fulanito de tal que flojo es, y como que ¿cómo se dice? Te evidenciaba delante de todos, ¿no? Entonces, all these things, the way we are, the way we talk to our students, the way we care about them, the way we don't care about them, all of our personal philosophies stay there. If we do it well, it'll stay sweet in their minds, right? If we do it, how would I say this? If we do it in a bitter way, it might stay as well in their minds, not in a bitter way as well, not very sweet. So we most try to keep a balance on what we do or what we say. I take advantage to apologize if I've ever said something that might have made you feel uncomfortable, or if it might have offended you in the past on my actions, or on what I've said. I'm really sorry. I apologize if I ever did. But keep that in mind. Whatever we come in the classroom, whatever we share with our students, whatever we tell them. This is the personal self-being that we blend with what we deliver in our classes. Keep that on mind. Are we clear? You there yet? Or you're
Yes.
done?
Yes.
Yes.
Clear.
Okay, good. Then we have the propositional knowledge, case knowledge, strategic knowledge. What is that? It's the forms in which each of the previous might be organized. How and when to implement content, pedagogy, and curriculum, right? So basically, these are like, this would be like the formalities, like the frame in which we will place each one of the previous contents, each one of the previous types of knowledge. It'll have to do, of course, with every single one of the previous ones. For example, think of the institution for which you teach, right? Imagine you are teaching at a there are many movies about this, for example. Imagine you are teaching at a religious school in which you have to speak in a certain way, you have to dress in a certain way, and you even have to take care of what you say because of the approach and the philosophy of the school. You see what I mean? And then how to incorporate within that all the components of your teaching in terms of technical knowledge, right? In terms of linguistic knowledge, like which level, how's your level of English? In terms of, well, of practical knowledge, and of course, in terms of your personal practical knowledge. And that is, how much are you allowed to disclose about yourself, about your personal way of being, about your personality, in other words. See what I mean? It's like putting all of the pieces together within one single frame. Okay, that is the propositional knowledge part. It's the case knowledge, it's the strategic knowledge. Are we clear so far? Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. I think we're almost done. Yes, pretty much. So how much do I know as a teacher? Have you asked this question now that we have seen the different types of knowledge that exist for teachers? Can you ask this question to yourself? I'll give you a few minutes to think of that. 2-3 minutes to think of that. Can you think of that? Think of that. If you can take note, think of that. How much do I know as a teacher? What do I know? ¿Qué sé? ¿Qué me hace falta? ¿Qué siento que me hace falta? Ya me voy a graduar. Primeramente Dios, en 6 meses, 7 meses ya estaré del otro lado. Pero siento que me hace falta algo. ¿O no? Yo ya estoy al tiro. Fibra, filosa, ya yo estoy lista para salir y comerme el mundo. ¿Qué tanto sé? How much do I know? Can you think of that? Can you reflect on that? You can write some notes for yourself.
Could you repeat what you said, teacher?
Yes, the question was, la pregunta fue, How much do I know as a teacher? ¿Qué tanto sé como maestra? Después de haber revisado los diferentes tipos de conocimiento que idealmente, no que idealmente, que un maestro de lenguas tiene o por los cuales se caracteriza normalmente, la pregunta es, viene a mí, a uno mismo, ¿qué tanto sé? No, pues siento que me hace falta un poco más de este conocimiento. A lo mejor yo debería elaborar más o desarrollar más o compartir más un poco, abrirme un poco más. O soy muy abierto en mi personal practical knowledge. ¿Sí? Can you reflect on that?
Can you repeat the question, please? Is my audio isn't my
Aquí estoy, nada
connection?
más que les estoy dando unos minutitos. Les di 3 minutitos, para que ustedes reflexionen en su conocimiento como maestros.
Sí, disculpe que mi conexión está fallando, disculpe.
Can I say something, teacher?
Yes, please.
Well, I started teaching 2 months ago, and I think that after taking material didáctico, so I think I felt ready to start teaching. So now I have 3 students from different ages and levels, and to be honest, I feel very comfortable when teaching. I have fun, and I think my students are getting results soon. So I really feel comfortable while teaching.
Amazing. I'm so happy to hear that, Santiago. You're Santiago, right?
Yeah, I'm Santiago.
I'm very happy to hear that. It is really, really, really gratifying to hear that our students are being empowered and that feel ready to go ahead and teach. Good, thank you. Anybody else that might want to share his or her self-reflection on what you know as a teacher? Anyone?
Well, I don't think I'm ready to be in front of a classroom or big classroom. Maybe I could manage a small group, but I don't think I'm ready, and I don't feel neither prepared. But maybe because of my personality, because I'm introverted, but that's just my point.
Good, 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 good.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Well, I think it's necessary that we as teachers select good books for teaching. You know, also we measure the students' level through an app or a website. So then teaching becomes easier. That's my point of view. After doing my research and like planning my classes, I concluded that, yeah.
Okay, good, good. Thank you for sharing that, Santiago. Okay, so I have these very specific questions that I posted. I don't know if on your 3-minute reflection you were able to think of this. Is there a specific measure of knowledge? How do I learn more about and better? How will I know what to teach? Did anyone came up with this sort of question to yourselves? Anyone?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. I said that if any of you, while doing your reflection, did come up with these sort of questions. Mientras estaban ustedes pensando qué tanto sé, alguien vino con estas preguntas. ¿Hay alguna forma específica de medir el conocimiento de un maestro? ¿Cómo aprendo más y mejor? How will I know what to teach? Why I'm posting these questions? Because you are about to finish your degrees in less than a year from now. Almost everything that we supposed to teach you has at this point been taught to you, ideally, and we expecting that all of you have taken advantage of it. Once you leave, then you'll be ideally ready. But as for these questions, the answer then would be, is there a specific measure of knowledge? I would say no. There are types of knowledge being identified. Yes. A measure means how much. Well, we can learn as much as we want. There's no limit for developing our knowledge, right? I will never stop. We never stop. In other words, we never stop learning. Every day we learn new things. The key here is do not think you know everything. Always think that you need to learn more. On your own, you can always take additional training courses once you're done. Today, with the internet, you can go on infinite number of sites and just learn new things. Knowledge is there. You just have to pick it and choose what you want. How do I learn more and better? It depends on us. How do I learn more and better? Well, in the way I feel more comfortable with, right? I must find what suits better to me and in which way I feel more comfortable. And from there on, I'll get further learning as much as I want. How will I know what to teach? Well, that question answers itself. It all depends on the needs of your learner. You will see, right? First, identify the context in which you will have to teach. And from there, you will direct your classes as to what better suits not only your learners, but also what might be more suitable for you in pedagogical terms, in metalinguistic terms, in practical knowledge, and so on. It's context that would determine most, that will guide your teaching pretty much. Okay? So with this, we finish. Are there any questions? Anyone? Anyone?
No, teacher.
No? Anyone would like to share anything, a thought or something?
Yeah, I want to share something.
Yes?
Well, I'm teaching English to a teacher who teach, I think, civics and ethics, and I teach Spanish to a American woman who's a Spanish teacher. So I want to say that there's not a time limit to continue learning. They, even as teachers, wants to improve their language. So so there is always time and chance to continue learning second language, even as adults. So
Yes.
it's important to be willing to learn more. Yeah.
That's true. There will always be time and more opportunities coming every day on how to learn. It depends on us, on how eager are we with our learning, right? Try not to stay where you are. Always keep moving, 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 learning more and more and more. And that'll make you grow stronger in all the different types of knowledge that ideally and that language teachers have been acknowledged to possess. Any questions, anyone? Preguntas? Is teacher Floricely still around?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I'm gonna stop. I can share you the presentation if you want. I will make it available for you. Okay, and I'll pass it to teacher Floricely. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, okay?
All right, thank you, Magnolia. We really appreciate your sharing of this very important and interesting information. Is there any other question, guys? You can ask in Spanish if you want to. Pueden preguntar en español si quieren, si se sienten más cómodos.
Any questions, anyone?
It's not a question, it's a comment. I think it was really clear, and actually it was interesting for me because now we can, well, I can say that I can see the importance of the knowledge that the teacher should have. So, and why should we, expand the knowledge that we already had. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. I want to go back to the slides. Can I, Floricely?
Sure.
Okay. You see this slide? You see this slide?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
you see, there is one aspect we did not, well, not that we did not cover, but because it's very extensive, it will have a chapter on its own, pretty much, like every type of knowledge. But within, remember that within teacher's personal practical knowledge is the teacher's personal philosophies, metaphors, and narrative. It's also teacher's emotions, teacher's psychology. It's all the emotions and psychology teachers bring with them, okay? That is very important because I only talk here about the technical aspects, right? Or the objective side of the teachers, of language teachers' knowledge. This is one side of the coin, and then the other side of the coin will be all the emotional part of language teachers' knowledge, which as well is strongly linked to all these knowledge. Okay? Y para eso vamos a tener a la mega experta en el FEL. Pues ya vieron algunos videos, ¿no? De Cristina O'Connell, les mandé a ver el videíto, ¿se acuerdan? Es la parte emocional del maestro. Todo lo que vimos la semana pasada, ¿se acuerdan? De los estudios que presentaron, de por qué es importante, ¿no? Que los maestros, cuáles fueron los aspectos que los maestros recalcaron importantes. O sea, todo eso que vimos cae dentro de cualquiera de estos rubros del conocimiento de maestros. Y es importante tenerlos claros y saber en dónde va cada cosa, porque eso nos ayuda a identificar nuestras fortalezas, ¿sí? Y nuestras áreas de oportunidad que necesitan atención, en donde tal vez debiésemos trabajar más. Okay? Any questions? Any other comment you might want to share?
So far, no.
Bueno, pues si ya no hay más preguntas ni comentarios, chicos, no me queda más que agradecerles que hayan asistido y participado en esta presentación.